Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to my channel to watch another video about Australian music. My name's Liam and I'm going to be talking today about what I believe are the top 20 Australian solo artists of all time. So a solo artist is someone who performs their own music as an individual. That could be a singer-songwriter, a pop star, a producer, a DJ, someone or something like that. So I'm not including bands. I'm also not going to include artists who might perform as an individual with a band. For example, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. I'm not going to be including him. But there are some artists on this list who have performed with bands before, attached to their names, but they have also performed mostly as solo musicians, so I will be including those artists. Now, this list is my opinion of what is an objective list, but that opinion is going to vary person to person. So I fully expect you to put in your comments why you thought I was wrong, why person X should be higher/lower. So just put them in the comments. Tell me about what you feel. All right, let's get into it. For number 20, I'm going with a singer-songwriter who was kind of like an Aussie bloke, and he made Australiana sounding music that was about Australian culture. He sang in an Australian accent. Why am I speaking in past tense? He's still around, and he makes great Aussie music. All right, number 19 is a more recent solo musician who came from where I come from, Western Australia, Perth. He's a young man, and he really took off in the internet age. He went kind of on his own accord. I think he might have had a lot of success on SoundCloud. I'm not 100% on that. But yeah, he found it through his own measures. He didn't really use Triple J. I think maybe he got attached to a label, but you know, the music that he put out was really enjoyed by that kind of young crowd of pop lovers from the kind of mid 2010s onwards, and now he's quite an influential figure all over the world. He often features on songs from other really popular artists. Like he often collaborates with Charlie XCX. I think they're pretty good friends.
My youth is yours, run away now forever. My youth is yours.
Okay, number 18. It's a female solo musician who was really big in the mid-2000s. She's kind of had a little bit of a resurgence lately too, with some new music that she's putting out, and I guess maybe nostalgia. People are kind of respecting what she did in the mid-2000s, and I personally quite enjoyed her music when she put it out in the early 2000s and the mid-2000s. There was kind of just like a nice, endearing quality about it. Great musicianship. She was a good pianist and a great singer.
Doesn't it feel peculiar when everyone wants a little more, and so did I do remember.
Okay, number 17 is a more recent artist. It's a female singer-songwriter who plays kind of like swampy Australiana electric guitar sounding music. She also sings in a thick Australian accent, and she became quite prominent overseas a few years ago. She was actually nominated for a Grammy at one point, and she just got a lot of attention internationally somehow. I'm not really sure how. I guess just because her music was good. She's been a little quieter lately, and I guess her popularity hasn't really risen over the last few years. It's kind of plateaued a bit. But yeah, around that kind of like 2015, 2016 sort of time era in music, she was absolutely popping.
The nice lady next door talks of green beds and all the nice things she wants to plant in them.
Okay, number 16, singer who was in a band in the 70s. He was in a very famous Australian band, but he went solo, and when he went solo, he put out music that was really popular, to be honest. Most of the stuff he put out was in the late 80s and early 90s. It's really kind of like summery sounding, really kind of vibrant, and a few of his songs in particular still get a lot of attention on Australian classic rock radio, and one of them is very like kind of meme friendly. A lot of young people really love it, and yeah, he goes down as a genuine Australian icon.
That's the way gonna be, the darling. Welcome riding on the odds.
Okay, number 15. It's a female singer-songwriter who plays country music, and she's probably, she's definitely the most famous female country musician from Australia, and she had a lot of success in the late 90s and early 2000s as well. And yeah, she gets a lot of credit right now. I think she got inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. People have a lot of nostalgia for some of her music. I think one of her songs in particular, which was her biggest, is actually a beautiful and amazingly written song. I still kind of, put it on as a little bit of a guilty pleasure every now and then, to be honest.
Why do you sing? Why do you sing? Why do you see right through?
Okay, 14. It's an artist who was big in the 80s and 90s, and she's a female singer-songwriter, kind of like a pop star as well. I think, I should have checked this before I made this video, but I think maybe she was attached to some sort of like group or TV show or something like that. Maybe in the comments someone can let me know. And that's maybe how she kind of started out. But she did definitely get her own sort of presence later on, and I believe she's actually really quite popular internationally, especially in Europe. That's what some people have told me in comments on my videos.
Wrap my heart and soul, but in return, I want you to.
Okay, 13. We're going back to country, and this guy is, in my opinion, the biggest country artist to ever come out of Australia. Probably the most respected of all country musicians in Australia. He's had the most success internationally, and I think that's probably actually where he's had more notoriety. Like in Australia, not a lot of people really talk about this guy, or his music's not really in the Australian music zeitgeist a whole lot. But in America, I think he's really popular on country music radio and places like that. So I guess we just give him a lot of respect for the fact that he's put himself out there as an Aussie, and he's actually someone who kind of like presents himself really well too, and he embodies Australian culture well.
I wanna love somebody like.
Okay, number 12. A solo artist and kind of like a producer as well. He's an amazing singer. He's an amazing songwriter too, and his music production skills are incredible as well. I think maybe some people don't realize that he does it all on his own, and he kind of does produce the songs as well as write them. Some of his songs, one in particular, are huge all over the world. He might be considered a one-hit wonder everywhere else other than Australia, but he's had some pretty big songs here in Australia other than his biggest one. But his music is very well respected in the kind of like music nerd community. We haven't heard from him in over 10 years, and people are dying to hear more music from this guy, and I personally would love to hear it. I would love for this guy to release, a single, an EP, an album. That would be amazing. But I think he just had so much success that he just gapped it, and he was like, I'm done. I just don't want the attention. I'm just an artist, and he just kind of does his own thing now.
I guess that I don't need that though. Now you're somebody that I used to know.
All right, number 11, solo musician. I've spoken a little bit about country music already, and I personally probably wouldn't call this guy country. I'd probably call this guy like folk, blues, and roots. And this guy is probably the most well-known in Australia for doing that. He was more prevalent in years prior to the other two country musicians that I've spoken to, so maybe you could say that's why I'd put him in a separate category, because his sort of more sort of folky, bluesy, rootsy music was different to what country music is now. But he's well known for his Australiana sound, his Aussie accent, and yeah, I guess he kind of pioneered that sound.
So lonesome, morbid or drear, than to stand in the bar of a pub with no beer.
Okay, number 10 is a solo musician. He's an Indigenous man, and he was really well known for making music about Indigenous culture, about, you know, some of the bad things that happen to Indigenous people, and I guess also some of the celebrated parts of the Indigenous community as well. But he was very brave in putting that music out, especially when he did, you know, in the 80s and 90s. And yeah, his legacy really lives on to this day.
The children are waiting. Yeah, the children are waiting.
Okay, number 9, pop star, mostly from the 80s. She had a little bit of success in the 70s, but that was mostly in film. And I guess she converted her stardom to music when she started releasing music. And her music was good pop music. It was very popular all over the world, especially here in Australia. And she was an extremely loved figure. She actually passed away a few years ago, and when she did, I remember people just gushing over her, saying how lovely of a person she was. I don't really think anyone had anything bad to say about her, and her music was pretty good for a pop musician.
Hopelessly devoted to you.
Okay, number 8 is another solo musician and also an Indigenous man. I must also point out the last 3 people that I've put in this list are all people who have passed on recently. So rest in peace to all of them. This man, he was well known for being probably the most renowned Indigenous musician who sung in native languages. And he was very attached to Indigenous culture, and he was also part of a band called Yothu Yindi, and I think he participated in writing some of the music for that band as well. But when he put out solo music in the I think mostly in the 2000s, really, he kind of went on his own to do his own thing, and you know, it was really effective. And some of the other kind of interesting things about this guy was he was also blind. So he would play the guitar without vision, and he would play it kind of like Jimi Hendrix style. He would play, I believe he would play like an upside down right-handed guitar left-handed, and he could make it work, which was so cool. But yeah, he passed on a few years ago, and his legacy really lives on. Okay, number 7, solo musician who mostly had success in the 80s and had a lot of success as the lead singer of a band. But when he went solo, he probably did go to another level, to be honest. His music is really attached to the Australian working class culture, and a lot of kind of like 50, 60, maybe even 40-year-old men who probably do labouring jobs and go to the pub and watch the cricket in the summer, love this guy. He embodies that culture like no other individual in Australia does, and yeah, he's an Australian icon. Okay, number 6. Now, I could see a lot of people probably getting a little bit shirty about me putting this guy up so high because he's more of a recent artist, but I believe he needs to be up there because of how massive he is and how successful he's been in his field and also in music generally. In Australia, especially Australia, he's so big here, and overseas as well. He's very popular. He gets nominated for Grammys. He has a huge streaming game. And so he's not a singer. He's not necessarily, I guess he is a songwriter, because he makes his own music, but he's a producer. So he produces his own music. Some might call him a DJ. I think he's a bit of a cross between a DJ and a producer. But he's probably the biggest one we have from Australia and arguably the best. And he's just good at what he does. He makes good pop songs, and he pushes the boundaries of pop. He makes really interesting sounds, and he's highly respected. Okay, number 5 is another more recent artist. It's a solo musician, and she writes kind of like edgy pop girl music, and she was making music as far back as the early 2000s, I believe, and she was doing that with a little bit of success in Australia, probably just in like the underground and on Triple J. But then in like the 2010s, she took off internationally, and she became a lot more famous. And that's when she started to cover her face with her haircut, and that's now become her renowned image. People know her because of the sort of image she has with her hair covering her face. Okay, number 4, we're going way back here. This solo musician was one of the first to become like a pop star in Australia when rock and roll music was first happening, and I guess he was probably like one of the first to be noticeable on TV and things like that. And sometimes people tell me in my videos and comments like, you should be mentioning this guy more, and I see those comments, and I try to mention him where I can as much as possible, but I feel like this video that I've made today is for him, and that's why I've got him so high at number 4 here, because he really did usher in the idea of being an Australian pop star. Okay, number 3 is a solo artist who had a very interesting journey, to be honest. He was born in England. Sometimes people point that out in my comments, but he moved to Australia as a young man, or maybe as a child. I probably should have checked that before I made this video. But in Australia, he did become very famous in the music industry early on. He made music in the early stages of rock and roll and the early stages of folk music becoming popular, and he had a couple of hits back then in the 60s and 70s, and then he just disappeared for a long time, and all of a sudden made this huge comeback in the 80s with a very famous and popular song and album, the most sold album in Australian history, in actual fact. And his music is synonymous with Australian culture, and he often is known to be making comebacks. So he'll often retire and then a few years later say, I'm having a comeback show. Okay, number 2. She, in my opinion, is the biggest pop star from Australia of all time. So she's famous for starting out as an actor. She acted in the television show Neighbours, which a lot of Australian actors start out in. And she was popular on that show, but once she started getting into music, she went to another level. She became popular here in Australia first, but then internationally as well, with some of her songs in the 80s. They were kind of like more sort of gimmicky songs in the 80s. And in the 90s, I think she kind of took her music to another level. I think that her musicianship really expanded. She still made pop music, but it was a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more mature. And in the 2000s, she kind of went to another level. She went, one of her songs went hugely successful all over the world, and essentially became probably like the biggest pop song on the planet at one point when it was out in the early 2000s. And she still puts music out even now, and it's still pretty popular. She's really popular in the UK. I think she actually lives there now. She still, plays shows and sells out arenas, and she's just like an adored Australian icon. Okay, so my number 1 And this might be a little bit of a divisive opinion, but I personally believe he has to be number one. Now this artist is not someone who's as well known internationally as some of the recent ones that I've been speaking about who are up there. Like he's certainly not as well known internationally as number two, but in Australia he is very well known, and he's very well respected. I would probably say he's the most respected Australian musician in Australian culture right now, at least. He's been around since the late 70s, and he's put out countless albums. I think he might be over 20 or 30 or something like that now. And his music is really about Australian culture. And he's been the most successful musician at writing about this very topic, which is an extremely difficult thing to achieve. Because of how he is so embedded in our culture, I believe he needs to be number one on this list.
Give my love to Angus and to Frank and Dolly. Tell them all I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks everyone for checking out this video. What did you think? Do you think this list is accurate? Are some too high or too low? Did I miss an artist that should be on there? Please chuck them in the comments. If you want to see more videos about Australian music, please feel free to subscribe and come back for more later.